I know I, for one, am really excited to hear the upcoming conversation between Abhi Arun and Daniel Dines talking about realizing grand vision at hypervelocity. Abhi Arun is a managing partner at Alkeon Capital and heads the private investment group. Abhi has close to 2 decades of experience in enterprise software, both as an operator and an investor, which includes working in firms such as Battery Ventures, Intel Capital, and Qualcomm. He loves backing product founders, disrupting large markets, and inventing new categories. Daniel Dines is the co-founder and CEO of UiPath, a leading provider of enterprise automation software. Daniel started UiPath in 2005 from Bucharest, Romania, with the goal of building a tech company that could help humans reduce the time and stress that come from mental, administrative business tasks. Congratulations, Daniel, on your recent successful IPO and showcasing the fantastic entrepreneurial talent that comes out of Romania and Eastern Europe. Over to you, Abhi and Daniel.
Thanks a lot. Hi, everybody. On behalf of TiEcon and Daniel and myself, I thank you for taking the time to join us today for this fun conversation. I have been looking forward to this chat for a long time, and I'm sure a lot of you are as well. My name is Abhi Arun, and I'm from Alkeon Capital. So with that, let's kick it over to Daniel, who we want to all hear from today. Daniel, congratulations on the UiPath IPO, a very successful one, probably one of the most successful we've had in a few months now, and probably for the year. So let's start with your personal story. We will get a chance to talk more about UiPath and how you've grown this company into a global behemoth. But before that, to dive in, could you tell us a little bit more about your personal background? Some of your early life, your formative years. Where did all this begin before you came to found UiPath?
Thank you so much, Abhi, and thank you, Andy, for your very nice introduction. It's a great pleasure and honor to be invited here and talk about our experience, which are mostly really about the hardship of building a company. And I know that our numbers and trajectory are impressive, but it's been a lot of hardship into the making. And we did it in a way against all the odds. First, starting with my personal background, I was born in Romania, which is a country that is hardly known for entrepreneurship. And it was my education, I've been to school and high school during communist times, and that was really not an encouragement. But still, it was the highlight of this year's was that, the only career that you could make was something like related to math or engineering. And despite the fact that my first passion, and I have a lot of passion about reading, I try to become a writer, but the reality is, made me follow an engineering college. And, that later on led me to get a job with Microsoft. And I moved to US, in Seattle, where I lived for 5 years. It's been a tremendous experience from a career perspective, but from my personal life, it was not so great. It was quite a bit of a cultural shock coming to the US, and I was barely speaking English back then. So I remember sitting in meetings and maybe understanding half of what people said about. Even in my first review, I remember my manager told me, Daniel, you should speak a bit more. And but that was actually quite one of the interesting lessons that I learned in life. You are always gonna win with your strength, but you are gonna lose based on your weaknesses. So, for instance, I am not really a talent in learning foreign languages. And as you can tell, after so many years, my English is still really not great. But I invested a lot of time into learning English. So that helped me quite a bit into talking to investors, hiring great people later on. And it's a great lesson to me that I want to share with every entrepreneur. So don't let your weaknesses stay, in front of you. It's everything can be overcome in life with the right level of effort.
Mhm. This is so interesting to hear, Daniel, because it really hits home for me personally. I'm an immigrant myself, and so are a lot of people in our audience today. And so your story hits home for a lot of people. How does somebody with your background, coming from a smaller Eastern European country, how do you go from there to building a global $40 billion company with employees in over 20 countries? How did that happen? Did you always have an idea growing up that you wanted to build something impactful, that you were going to do something special with your career? Or was this something that just happened to come along the way? How did the formation and the foundation for UiPath really begin?
Well, I think always I wanted to build something. It's, first of all, starting with my career as an author of books, a failed one. But always I wanted to build something. And in Microsoft, I felt that, I'm kind of limited and I cannot advance my career. I was like in a little box and I couldn't do much. And then after 5 years of Microsoft, I made this craziest idea to go back to Romania and start a company that was based on the talent that is available here. Eastern Europe, it's still a good foundry for tech talent, but really, I didn't know anything about building a business. So I had to learn the hard way to do a bit of marketing, to do sales, to legal aspect, and that was really tough. I would lie if I say I had the grand vision. We are becoming a big company. I think if I would have started telling people this 10 years ago, they would have think that I'm completely mad. So we were guided by the passion of building something, and I would say that that was one of the good thing, but also a mistake in a way, because we persisted so much in building what we like that we were kind of lucky to be able to find product market fit. We were not driven by customers. We were driven by our passion for technology, which is not something you normally do. But for us, it worked. I think, in a way, every company has its unique path. You cannot replicate the path of a company, but I think what you can learn, it's learning the mistakes and that the company is doing. So I'm really passionate about talking about our early on mistakes, what we learn. Because, when we found the product market fit, which happened around 2014, 2015, we went really like it was no tomorrow. We went big on it. After you spend 10 years in a small apartment, building something, ruin your career, you don't have the option for failure. You've been the true failure. It's not closing your business. The true failure is not growing. It's always not seeing signs of progress, not engaging customers, not doing the real thing of, not seeing your technology working. So when we got this chance we expanded globally. That was one thing that we learned coming from a small market. There is no time to perfect your business model in the US and then replicate to the US. We simply went across the three major continents, and we experienced with different business model, talking to customers, and it worked. That's the most amazing thing. Hire great people, send them in the field, send them in the world, and they will adjust, and they will simply, advance the business.
Yeah, that's this is the really underappreciated part of the UiPath story, Daniel. As we hear you talk, a lot of people look at UiPath and think it's an overnight success, but you know better than anybody else that that's far from the truth. From the outside, as an investor, I look at UiPath and I say, this is the fastest growing software company I have ever seen, at least in 10 years of my investing. But the part that's underappreciated is it took you 10 years to sell $1 million of revenue, and then 5 years from there to sell to $600 million of revenue. And so, as you think about that journey, what happened exactly? How did you, what clicked really for you to go from this 10 years of, working hard to just get your first $1 million of revenue to then this hyper growth phase? What clicked, and what sort of personal attributes did were you tested on to make sure you persevered during those first challenging 10 years?
I think I did two major pivoting in my life. So first, when I returned to Romania to start a business, I converted into a product guy. So I didn't write too much code into UiPath. And I think the most important one, around 5-6 years ago, was the moment when I understood enterprise sales. Because as an engineer, I think most of us would recognize we don't have too much appreciation for the enterprise sales. We believe customers should do their due diligence and they should choose the best product, and we should just focus on building the products, the great products. But it doesn't work. So I had this realization. If we are not building a great enterprise sales team, we make us a big disservice. But in order to do one, you have to learn it yourself, and you have to love it. You cannot do half-hearted, a job. Either you love it, either you don't. And for, I think, more than half of our journey in the past 5 years, I've been also acting CRO of the company. And I truly understood sales. And I had the opportunity to have great board members like Carl Aschenbach and Tom Mendoza, and I learned quite a lot about them. But I think it starts with the mentality. And I want to stress again, to me, as an entrepreneur, as the CEO of a company, you are the cheerleader. You are the first sales rep in your company. So you got to love the sales process, and you got to love the customer, and go and get out of yourself and talk to the customers, which for engineers, again, is not an easy thing. And I'm an introvert myself, but you have to just get out of your cocoon and talk to them, and you'll discover that actually customers are smarter than you in using your own product. That was a huge discovery. And I went back to our engineers and I told them, and that was also a big moment and I fought with them. I told them, guys, if a customer is asking something, we don't come with this, we will put it 2 months on our roadmap. We don't know about it. Let's just go and solve customers' problem. They are smarter than us. And they gradually understood this. And we converted completely into a company that is driven by customers' demand. So therefore, we were in a lucky position to build a product by listening to customers. I know it sounds like cliche, but if you truly do it, this is an amazing outcome.
That's Very interesting, actually, because it was going to bring me to my next topic that I wanted to double click on. So here you are, you started from with a small team in your apartment in Romania. Now you have one of the fastest growing enterprise software companies in the world with offices all across the three continents. But then it still wasn't all hunky dory from there. You still hit some obstacles. So walk us through some of these tough moments. As an example, 2019 comes to mind where people that already recognize UiPath as a clear leader in the RPA space, and many people termed you the bot king. But then you still had some challenges in business because of your hyper growth. In 2019, you had to lay off roughly 10% of your workforce and had to really steer the organization. So as you were scaling this company, what were some of the challenges you had to overcome during this tricky phase for the company? And what sort of leadership principles did you bring to the fore in order to maintain employee morale, maintain the culture, and really continue to take UiPath to success?
I would like to start with the leadership principle, and actually the biggest the most important pillar of our culture, which is humility. And this works for us as an operating framework. I don't want to pretend we are humble people, because that would not be humble, and first of all. But if this is your North Star, your guiding principle in making your decisions and communicating your decisions, in hiring people, firing people, I think gives you the ability to course correct very fast when you make mistakes. Many people make mistakes, but they cannot admit to themselves because they identify somehow with their decisions, which is a very wrong way of building a business. So in 2019, we were expanding really at the fastest pace, a company can do. From beginning of 18 to mid 19, we hired, I think, at the tune of 2,000 people. And we started with a company like 1,000 people. It was a huge endeavor. And when you do at such a high scale, it's obvious that you can mistakes in roles, in duplication of roles, in spending too much money. It was a spending spree somehow. Everybody was spending money, get new customers, expanding to different geos, structuring the sales team, go to market. So the moment we've seen it, and we've seen that our expenses are getting a bit out of control, we sit down, and that I have to really thank to the board and to the exec team. We sit down and we change the business course. And that was the best decision that we really made. We streamlined our operations. We've become a better boxer in Europe, much fitter boxer. And when the COVID hit, we were in a great shape, and we took advantage of our great shape, and we had an amazing 2020, as our numbers prove it.
Yeah, that turnaround, Daniel, that you talk about is still one of the most talked about stories in the Silicon Valley investor circles, is how quickly UiPath was able to turn around 2019 and turn into a profitable company in 2020. In this sort of phase in the last 5-6 years, obviously UiPath has grown and it has become a success story. What has that meant for you as a person and your personal growth? You obviously talked a little bit about the fact that you had to improve your language skills with English, and despite, at least in my opinion, you're one of the most articulate founders that I have ever interacted with. What personal growth have you experienced? If I were to talk to a friend of Daniel, and someone who knew you in 2010 versus Daniel of 2021, what has changed for you personally?
Well, Abhi, one of my biggest principles in life is to listen more and speak less. And maybe my inability to speak English well helps me. but I am constantly learning. This is, and the friends that know me, and our CFO Ashim, you know him very well, told me a few times that Daniel, it's interesting to watch you. You absorb from the people that you hire. It's very important to learn from the people you work with and really internalize. Because one of my strengths is that I have a creative mind. So I'm not going very deep necessarily into one domain, but I know enough to be dangerous in many areas. So I like really to learn, and then somehow it comes to me. You can aggregate the things, and
Mhm.
in this regard, I would like to I fancy myself as a learner. This is my life journey to always learn something, not necessarily to reach a goal. I don't want to win Wimbledon, even if I'm very passionate about tennis. But I learn every day to play tennis better, to become a better business leader, to become a better CEO. So this is my motivation, really.
Mhm. Yeah, it's a lesson in constant self-improvement, which leads to greater things. Switching gears a little bit, Daniel, from UiPath and your personal story into something that's more relevant for some of our audience today. We have a lot of young professionals. We have some founders in the audience, and as you think about and reflect on your own personal journey and success, what would be some of the advice you'd like to share with prospective founders and maybe executives and CEOs are in the audience today, maybe on a couple of different areas, starting out with fundraising. There's a lot of capital out there today in the private markets, especially. You've raised capital from some of the best investors in the world. What do you look for in an investor, and what advice would you give to an entrepreneur who's looking to raise capital?
Well, I can point as an example to nothing more recent than working with you and Alkeon. To me, was very important to find the chemistry, even personal chemistry. We are working a lot. We met a year ago, but then we talk quite often. You guys helped us quite a bit, and it's important that I trust. Money come cheap nowadays, but trust and having people that are passionate about the business they invest in and they do whatever they can to support the founder, it's not a commodity, it's a rare thing. So I never optimized for valuation. We always went to optimize for a blend of best investors at the right valuation.
Yeah, that's incredible advice, especially given the supply of capital today. You have to pick your partner. Really sounds like set you up for success for the long run. And obviously, thank you for the feedback on us as well. And one of the interesting times that we are going to have to deal with in the coming quarters and in the coming couple of years is how do we react to a world post COVID, right? And we're entering a world of remote only models, hybrid models, back in the office models, and you're in a unique position, where you have headquarters in 3 countries, really, maybe 4. You have employees in more than 20 countries, so truly global, company at this point. What trends are you seeing in this sort of post-COVID world? What advice would you give to other companies that are looking to open their offices back up in terms of how to maintain the employee satisfaction and retention, et cetera? What are some of the trends there? And then, by the way, I also want to shout out that you have a big office in India, and India is obviously going through a difficult time right now with COVID. So feel free to spend a minute on some of the COVID initiatives that you're undertaking as well at UiPath to help the cause.
I'd say that our experience it's not so different than other, large tech companies that made public, what they think about. In the beginning of COVID, we've seen a bit of a spike in productivity. I think we were really prepared to work remotely. Even before COVID, we didn't have a mandatory presence to the office. So people could simply announce, I'm not coming today without providing any reason at all. So they could choose where they work. But gradually we've seen a bit of decrease in productivity. So to me, it's clear, and based also on my experience of recent month when we got the chance to be vaccinated and we had some leadership meetings. They were very valuable. So I'm a true believer in a hybrid environment where people can meet from time to time. I don't know, maybe weekly, maybe once a month. It depends on function and the geo. But I believe that the face-to-face meeting has real value and charm, and it's part of our humanity. So we definitely are looking to open our office gradually and give people the. So I'm looking really to give people two big things. One is having the joy of freedom to choose where they work, but also having the joy of in-person discussions and having maybe a drink or at the office, meeting the other people. I think this combination, it's perfect. It's gonna change completely the way we work. And now, speaking about COVID, this is quite a tragedy. And I vividly remember that a year ago, when someone asked me, what's your biggest fear? I said that my biggest fear is that India, given the situation there and the population, is gonna experience the worst, the worst event in the world regarding to COVID. And unfortunately, this is happening now. And I don't see there any way that the vaccine can be deployed in time to stop this wave. So I think we have a duty to India as the world, and we are trying to do our little share. We are sending a plane full of oxygen. We are matching as a company all the donations that our employees are making. We are working with a great foundation now. It's just called like the Oxygen for India or something like this. And it's a tragedy. I'm deeply sorry about it. Many of our people have really experienced, people in very tough situation themselves or family members, people that know. It's not something, I don't know, I'm feeling a bit closer to this. It's not something that we really can take it lightly at this point.
Yeah, that's very well said, Daniel. And it's really great to hear some of the gestures and some of the initiatives that are undertaken to help improve the situation in India. And a lot of us here, both at TiEcon and beyond, are doing our part. And it's a humble reminder to all of us that there's so much to be grateful for in life, and you should do what you can when you can be in a position to help somebody else. Some parting thoughts, Daniel. This has been a really fun conversation. I actually got to learn so much more that I didn't even know about you. As you've as you've reflect back on your life and the career success you've had, we have a lot of again young professionals in the audience today. What advice would you give them as they think about their career paths and their journeys? As you think about a Daniel Dines sitting in the crowd today, hearing you talk, what advice would you give them?
Well, I reflect quite a lot about life and the meaning of life and especially in the past few months, seeing all this success I would like to tell them that success is a byproduct of doing what's the right thing in life. And life, it's really a balance between hardship and joy. I think it's not coming one without the other. It's really, I believe there are two big forces in life that they balance one to each other. The one is the joy of life, the other is the hardship of life. The more joy you have in life, the more hardship you'll get later in life. The more hardship you get now, the more joy you'll have. So I'm saying this because for an entrepreneur, hardship is inevitable, but I think this is something you have to really admit it. You don't have to be surprised. You have to take it as an investment in the future, and it's an investment in the future joy that the hardship you go through initially will bring in life. And that's regardless if you fail or if you are successful. Hardships gives you, I think, more meaning in life than just living a life of joy and pleasure.
That's incredible to hear, Daniel. Thanks so much for taking the time. I hope everybody else enjoyed this conversation just as much as I did. And many thanks to you once again for sharing your time with us, especially given how busy you are, given the recent IPO and the public journey that UiPath has gone through. So good luck for all the coming years. And we're excited to welcome you to TiEcon on an ongoing basis from here on.
Thank you so much, Abhi. It's been a pleasure to talk to you, as usual.
Yeah, as usual. Thanks, Daniel. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you, Daniel Dines and Abhi Arun, for this very engaging conversation on realizing a grand vision at hypervelocity and sharing with our audience how UiPath has become one of the fastest growing enterprise software companies. I really think everybody got the idea that you gave out, that you have to get through hardship to get to meaningful joy.